Masika Kalysha never imagined that one heartbreaking moment meant to honor her husband would spark one of the most heated conversations online about grief, privacy, and the unseen weight carried by grieving families. When she uploaded a carousel of emotional, raw, and deeply personal photos from Jamar Champ's funeral, she expected people to see her pain, her love, and the unbearable reality she now wakes up to every single morning. Instead, alongside the prayers and compassion, there were questions, criticisms, and debates about whether such intimate moments should ever be shared with millions of strangers. What began as an expression of love and mourning suddenly turned into a national discussion, one that Masika never asked for, never wanted, but was forced to face, while still carrying a grief so heavy it barely lets her breathe. And in the center of it all were the images of a widow and her daughters, trying to survive the kind of loss no family should ever endure. The announcement came quietly, without theatrics or build-up, just a simple series of photos posted on her Instagram timeline. But the images spoke louder than any caption ever could. They showed Masika dressed in black, her daughters clinging to her face swollen with tears as she stood over the casket of her late husband. Every picture captured a moment of heartbreak, each one a frozen glimpse into a day filled with more pain than words could describe. Fans responded instantly, flooding the comments with prayers, condolences, and messages of support. Some praised her courage for sharing such vulnerable moments at a time when so many people hide their grief behind filtered perfection. Others thanked her for showing that even public figures bleed, break, and collapse under the weight of tragedy, just like everyone else. But as the hours passed, a different kind of conversation began to gain traction. Critics questioned her intentions, asking why she felt compelled to post 20 photos from the funeral. Some accused her of oversharing, while others claimed she should have kept those moments private to protect her daughters and honor Jamar in silence. A few even accused her of turning something sacred into content. These comments struck a nerve, not because they came from strangers, but because they came at a time when she was already drowning in grief, trying to keep moving, trying not to collapse under the pressure of holding her family together. And yet, despite the backlash of the pictures were not meant to spark debate. They were a portrait of a woman in mourning, a woman trying her best to honor the vows she took even in death. In her caption, Masika poured out her soul with a vulnerability that few influencers or reality stars ever dare to show. She wrote, "Grief is the loudest silent echo that you will never hear but can't get out of your head. It's deafening. It's like a stab to your heart. It feels like breathing with no lungs." Every word seemed to tremble with the weight of someone who had cried so hard for so long that even silence felt loud. She thanked the people who had supported her, honored her husband, and stood with her daughters through the unthinkable. And then she wrote the line that left thousands of fans in tears. "I took my vows. Till death do us part. I will carry on your legacy. You will always have a place in my forever broken heart." It was the kind of message that didn't sound like a caption. It sounded like a farewell written through tears. But grief, especially public grief, has never been simple. And it didn't take long before critics began dissecting the photos, analyzing the lighting, the angles, the emotional expressions, turning something sacred into material for online commentary. People questioned the intention behind the dark filter Masika placed over the photo carousel. Some speculated that she wanted it to feel cinematic or aesthetic, while others suggested she used the darkness as a symbolic expression of her loss. Confusion and speculation grew, and soon the narrative shifted from the emotional story captured in the photos to the debate surrounding the ethics of sharing grief online. What should have been a moment of compassion turned into a battlefield of opinions, each one delivered by someone who had no idea what Masika was going through. Behind the scenes, insiders close to the family revealed that Masika had been struggling to process her grief, even before the funeral took place. They described her as someone who tried to stay strong for her daughters, but would break down the moment she was alone. One friend said she barely slept, barely ate, and often cried until she physically couldn't anymore. The family had reportedly rallied around her, with close friends stepping in to help with meals, household duties, and childcare. But grief doesn't take turns, and it doesn't wait for the cameras to stop rolling. It follows you when the house is silent, when the room is dark, and when the world keeps spinning as if nothing has happened. And insiders claim that this was exactly why Masika chose to share the photos, not for attention, but because she didn't know what else to do with her pain. As conversations about the photos spread across social media, Masika reached a breaking point. After seeing the criticisms, she took to her Instagram story to respond in a way that left no room for debate. Her message was raw, direct, and unfiltered, the kind of message that only comes from someone who has nothing left to lose. She wrote, "If you have a problem with anything I post on my page involving my husband, my life, my kids, or literally anything, I invite you to go fuck yourself and unfollow me. I will not be explaining myself in any way, shape, form, or fashion to a single soul." It was a declaration that she refused to let strangers dictate how she mourns, how she honors her husband, or how she processes the pain that has taken over her life. And in that moment, it became clear that grief had forced her into a place where she no longer had the energy to be diplomatic. Her response wasn't just a clapback, it was a boundary drawn with fire. And while some critics argued that her reaction proved she was too emotional to share such moments publicly, others came to her defense, insisting that anyone judging her in the middle of her grief was acting without compassion or context. Fans flooded her comments with messages urging her to ignore the negativity. They reminded her that grief has no timeline, no instructions, and no correct way to express itself. Some said the photos made them feel less alone in their own losses. Others said seeing a public figure grieve so openly made them feel understood in ways they never had before. And slowly, the conversation began to shift from judgment to empathy. Further adding to the emotional intensity of the situation were the reactions from Jamar Champ's friends and family members. Many expressed gratitude for the photos, saying they allowed people who couldn't attend the funeral to feel included in honoring him. Some posted their own tributes, describing Jamar as a loyal friend, a devoted father figure, and a man whose presence filled every room he walked into. They praised Masika for her strength and for holding the family together despite facing unimaginable pain. One relative even wrote that Masika's post captured the love Jamar left behind and urged people to stop criticizing a widow mourning the man she planned to grow old with. Insiders also revealed that the funeral itself was incredibly emotional, with those in attendance describing moments that left the entire room in tears. They said Masika held her daughter's hands tightly as they approached the casket, whispering final words of love and farewell. They said she broke down multiple times, only to gather herself again so she could comfort her girls. They described the atmosphere as heavy, sacred, and deeply painful. For many, seeing the funeral photos online was a way to remember the beauty of the life Jamar lived, not just the tragedy of his passing. And for them, those photos were not oversharing. They were documentation of love in its rawest form. As the days passed, Masika continued posting subtle tributes to Jamar, a song lyric, a short message, a memory frozen in time. She didn't explain her choices or justify her decisions. She simply mourned in the only way she knew how. Supporters continued to send love, encouragement, and prayers. But the debate about online grief didn't disappear. It grew louder as people across Twitter, TikTok, and blogs shared their own experiences with loss and discussed whether social media helps or harms the healing process. Some argued that posting about grief invites criticism, while others insisted that grief shared publicly can offer community and comfort. Masika's situation became a symbol of a larger conversation about how modern society processes loss in the digital age. And through it all, Masika kept returning to one message. She did what she needed to do for herself and her daughters. She reminded people that grief is personal, unpredictable, and painfully unique. She thanked those who stood by her, saying, "To everyone who has supported me and my kids, I can't thank you enough. You have carried me on your backs. Please continue to check on us. Just showing up is worth more than gold." Her vulnerability, her defensiveness, and her raw honesty all pointed to a woman trying to survive something that most people only fear. In the end, this story isn't just about photos or criticism. It's about a family shattered by loss, a widow forced to explain her pain, and a world still learning how to treat grief with the compassion it deserves. As Masika continues to mourn the love of her life, the conversation around her viral post becomes a reminder that grief has no rules, no boundaries, and no template. Whether shared publicly or carried silently, pain is real, love is real, and loss is universal.